Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of the UES Discovery as the massive space station came into view. Nexus Prime was bigger than anything he had ever seen before. The station stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction, its surface covered with towers that reached out into space like metal fingers. Lights blinked across its hull in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. This was the home of the Galactic Council, the place where 12 alien species made decisions for the entire galaxy. Ambassador Lisa Grant walked up beside him. Her face was calm, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. They had traveled for 6 months to get here, carrying humanity's hope for a better future. Earth needed allies. The planet was running out of resources, and space was the only answer. But first, they had to convince the Council that humans deserved a place among the stars. The Discovery docked at one of the smaller ports. Jake had expected something grand, but the docking bay looked almost empty. A few maintenance robots moved around, but no one came to greet them. Lisa straightened her diplomatic uniform and checked her tablet one more time. The presentation was ready. Earth's best scientists had worked for years to prepare something that would impress these advanced beings. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. The air felt thick and strange, like breathing underwater. Other beings moved past them without looking. Jake saw creatures that walked on 6 legs, others that floated in the air, and some that looked like living shadows. None of them seemed to care about the human visitors. The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above, while the floor was a perfect circle of white stone. 12 platforms rose from the floor at different heights, each one holding a different alien species. Jake tried not to stare, but it was impossible to look away. These beings had technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. The largest platform held the Zephyrians. Zarthak, their leader, was twice the size of a human with skin that looked like flowing metal. His 4 arms moved in, patterns that made objects float through the air without touching them. On another platform, the crystalline helix beings sparkled like living diamonds. They didn't speak with voices, but somehow Jake could hear their thoughts humming in his mind. The gas-based Vortani looked like colored smoke that moved and shifted constantly, sometimes appearing solid, and sometimes fading away completely. Lisa stepped forward and activated her presentation. Holographic images appeared showing Earth's cities, its people, and humanity's greatest achievements. She talked about human space exploration, their fusion reactors, and the quantum computers that had taken decades to build. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber as she explained why humanity deserved to join the galactic community. The silence that followed was crushing. Then Zarthak began to examine the human technology displays. He waved one of his metallic hands, and the holograms changed, zooming in on details that Lisa hadn't shown. His voice boomed across the chamber when he finally spoke. "Fusion drives," he said, and somehow his tone made the words sound dirty. How quaint. We abandoned such crude methods millennia ago. The helix beings hummed louder, and Jake realized they were communicating with each other faster than human thought. One of them projected words directly into his mind. Quantum computers. How adorable. Like watching insects try to count. More voices joined in from around the chamber. The Vortani's gaseous forms swirled faster as they spoke in voices like wind through caves. "Space-time understanding barely beyond stone tools," they whispered. Other species added their own comments, each one cutting deeper than the last. Then, something terrible happened. They began to laugh. The sound was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It wasn't human laughter, but something alien and wrong. The Zephyrians made sounds like metal grinding against metal. The crystal beings chimed. Like broken bells, the gas creatures whistled and howled. Each species had their own way of showing amusement, but together it created a noise that felt like being torn apart. Lisa stood frozen as wave after wave of alien laughter washed over her. Her presentation flickered and died as the council members continued their cosmic joke. Jake wanted to grab her and run, but his feet wouldn't move. This was worse than being attacked. This was being dismissed as nothing more than entertainment. Zarthak raised his hand and the laughter slowly died away. His metallic face showed something that might have been pity. "Little humans," he said, "your enthusiasm is noted. But you must understand your place in the galaxy. You are children playing with fire while adults discuss the movement of stars." The formal decision came quickly. Humanity would be granted probationary status as a protected world. Earth could continue to exist, but humans were forbidden from expanding beyond their solar system without council permission. Any attempt to develop advanced technology would be monitored. Any sign of aggression would result in immediate intervention. Lisa had no choice but to accept. The alternative was having Earth declared a hostile world, which would mean the end of everything. She signed the documents with shaking hands while the council members watched like adults humoring a child's game. The journey back to Earth felt endless. Lisa locked herself in her quarters while Jake stared out at the stars. Those points of light that had once represented hope and possibility now felt like prison bars. Humanity was alone in a galaxy that saw them as nothing more than a curiosity, trapped in their own solar system by beings who considered them barely worthy of notice. When they finally reached Earth, Jake had to deliver the news to the world. Leaders waiting at the spaceport. He watched their faces fall as he explained the terms. Humanity had reached for the stars and been slapped down like an annoying insect. The galaxy had laughed at them and then locked them away. But in the depths of hidden facilities around the world, scientists and engineers were already beginning to work on projects that the council would never see coming. The laughter would not be forgotten, and neither would the humiliation. Humanity had been underestimated before, and those who did so had always regretted it eventually. 3 years had passed since the humiliation at Nexus Prime, and Dr. Elena Rodriguez had not slept well since. She stood in the depths of the Colorado facility, 2 miles beneath solid rock, staring at readings that shouldn't exist. The numbers on her screen defied everything she thought she knew about physics. In the sealed chamber before her, a substance darker than space itself swirled in patterns that made her eyes water. The Prometheus project had begun 6 months after the diplomatic disaster. While the world above accepted their cage, brilliant minds worked in secret to break free. Elena led a team that included some of Earth's greatest scientists. Dr. Carl Bennett specialized in theoretical physics that most people couldn't even pronounce. Amy Foster could build machines that turned impossible theories into working reality. Together, they studied something the galaxy's greatest minds had dismissed as worthless. Dark matter made up most of the universe, but no one understood it. The council species used it like humans used air, never questioning what it really was. They built their sensors around normal matter, their weapons around conventional physics, their entire civilization around the assumption that invisible meant harmless. They were wrong. Elena had discovered the truth by accident. While analyzing cosmic background radiation, she noticed patterns in the dark matter distribution around Earth's solar system. The substance wasn't just floating randomly through space. It was responding to something, gathering in specific locations like metal filings around a magnet. When she mapped these concentrations, they formed structures that looked almost like circuits. Admiral Pete Collins walked into the lab with his usual scowl. The old soldier didn't understand the science, but he understood results. His job was to turn Elena's discoveries into weapons that could make the council regret their laughter. He stopped beside her workstation and stared at the swirling darkness in the test chamber. "Still looks like empty space to me," he said. Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. That's the point. Watch this. She activated a device that looked like a metal ring attached to dozens of cables. Energy flowed through the ring, and suddenly the dark matter began to move differently. Instead of random swirls, it formed geometric shapes that rotated and shifted like a living machine. The patterns were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Dark matter exists partially outside normal space, Elena explained, as the shapes grew more complex. It can be programmed like software, but it affects reality like hardware. We can make it carry information, store energy, or manipulate physical objects from a distance. Carl Bennett emerged from another part of the lab, his hair wilder than usual. He had been working on containment systems for 18 hours straight, and it showed. In his hands, he carried a small device that hummed with barely contained power. "I've done it," he announced. "Stable containment for concentrated dark matter. We can build it into ship hulls, weapon systems, even personal equipment." Amy Foster looked up from her workbench, where she was assembling something that looked like a cross between a computer and a sculpture. "The manufacturing process is ready too. We can incorporate dark matter matrices into any metal structure during construction. Ships built this way won't just be invisible to sensors. They'll be partially invisible to reality itself." Admiral Collins felt his heartbeat quicken. After 3 years of humiliation and confinement, humanity finally had something the Council couldn't detect or understand. "How many ships can we build?" "As many as we have resources for," Elena replied. "Dark matter is everywhere. We just need to harvest and process it. The hard part was learning how to make it do what we wanted." Deep in the asteroid belt, construction had already begun. Hidden shipyards used automated systems to build vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The hulls incorporated dark matter matrices that made them undetectable to conventional sensors. The engines used dark matter manipulation instead of fusion drives, allowing them to move through space without leaving energy signatures. Most importantly, the weapons could affect targets from dimensions the Council didn't know existed. Captain Jake Morrison, now Admiral Morrison, floated in the observation deck of the first completed prototype. The UES Shadow looked almost normal from the outside, but its true nature was hidden in the strange shimmer that played across its hull. When the dark matter systems activated, the ship didn't just become invisible. It became something that existed between the cracks of normal space. The test flight to Proxima Centauri took only 6 hours instead of the months required by conventional drives. The ship passed directly through a Council monitoring station without triggering any alarms. The aliens never knew humanity had traveled beyond their solar system because their instruments couldn't detect something that wasn't entirely there. Elena reviewed the mission data with growing excitement. The dark matter drive worked perfectly, the stealth systems were undetectable, and the weapons tests had exceeded all expectations. They had fired at asteroids in the Proxima system and watched them simply disappear, erased from local space-time without leaving debris or radiation. "We need a fleet," Admiral Morrison said during their secure briefing. 50 ships minimum, maybe 100. The Council has forces in 12 star systems, and we need to hit them all simultaneously. "The construction teams are working around the clock," Amy reported. "We have 27 ships completed and another 43 in various stages of assembly. The new automated systems can build them faster than we ever imagined." Carl showed them designs for larger vessels, including a flagship that would carry enough firepower to destroy entire space stations. "The UES Retribution will be ready in 8 months. It's designed for assault operations against heavily defended targets like Nexus Prime." Elena felt a chill as she looked at the weapon specifications. Dark matter weapons didn't just destroy targets, they removed them from existence entirely. There would be no survivors, no wreckage, no evidence that anything had ever been there. It was the ultimate expression of humanity's anger at being dismissed and caged. Admiral Collins studied the construction schedules and fleet deployment plans. "We'll need crews for all these ships. People we can trust absolutely." "Already handled," Morrison replied. "We've been recruiting from the best pilots, engineers, and soldiers in the system. Everyone who signs on knows this is a one-way mission. Either we win and free humanity, or we die trying." The months that followed were a blur of activity. Scientists refined the dark matter technology, while engineers built ships in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Military planners studied Council fleet movements and identified key targets. Intelligence officers gathered information about alien defenses and capabilities, but the most important work was psychological. The people working on Prometheus weren't just building weapons, they were preparing for war against beings who considered them less than insects. Every person involved had watched the recordings of humanity's humiliation. They had seen their species laughed at and dismissed. Now they had the power to make the galaxy take notice. Elena often worked late into the night, fine-tuning systems that would soon carry human revenge across the stars. The dark matter responded to her commands like it was eager to be used. Sometimes she wondered if the substance itself was angry, if it had been waiting eons for someone to unlock its true potential. The final ship rolled off the production line on a cold morning in March. Admiral Morrison stood in the hidden shipyard, looking at the fleet that would change galactic history. 50 dark matter warships hung in perfect formation, their hulls shimmering with otherworldly energy. Each one was invisible to Council sensors and armed with weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics. Time to remind the galaxy that humanity doesn't stay down, he said to Elena as they watched the ships prepare for departure. The countdown to war had begun. 5 years had crawled by since humanity's rejection at Nexus Prime. The galaxy had moved on, forgetting about the small blue planet and its primitive inhabitants. Council records listed Earth as a minor protectorate world, barely worth monitoring. The assumption was that humans had accepted their place and would spend centuries slowly developing basic technologies under careful supervision. The assumption was wrong. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her expanded laboratory, now spread across 3 underground levels beneath the Colorado mountains. Her latest discovery made her hands shake as she read the data streams flowing across her screens. She had been analyzing Council communication networks, using dark matter sensors to intercept messages that traveled through dimensions the aliens thought were secure. What she found changed everything. The 12 species of the Galactic Council weren't just advanced civilizations working together for mutual benefit. They were predators who had spent millennia crushing any species that showed potential to challenge their dominance. The evidence was hidden in their own records, buried in files they never expected anyone to decode. "Carl, Amy, you need to see this," Elena called out to her colleagues. Dr. Carl Bennett looked up from his dark matter resonance chamber while Amy Foster stopped calibrating a new weapons array. They gathered around Elena's workstation as she displayed the intercepted data. "This is a Council archive going back 2,000 years, she explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Look at this entry about the Altarian civilization. The holographic display showed a star system with advanced orbital habitats and faster-than-light communication networks. The Altarians had developed quantum entanglement technology that could send messages instantly across galactic distances. They had been on the verge of revolutionizing how the galaxy communicated. Then came the plague. A biological weapon specifically designed to target Altarian genetics, Elena continued. Released by Council operatives disguised as trade delegates. Within 6 months, 90% of their population was dead and their homeworld was uninhabitable." Carl stared at the data with growing horror. "They murdered an entire civilization for developing better communication technology?" "It gets worse." Elena switched to another file. "The Kepler Union developed artificial intelligence systems more advanced than anything the Council had seen. Look what happened to them." The display showed a cascade of system failures spreading across dozens of worlds. Every computer, every AI, every digital system suddenly crashed simultaneously. Centuries of technological advancement were wiped out in hours, leaving the Kepler Union in a primitive state they never recovered from. Quantum virus, Amy whispered, recognizing the attack pattern. Someone introduced corrupted code into their base programming language. Everything connected to their networks was destroyed. Elena nodded grimly. Council Special Operations Division. They have entire departments dedicated to sabotaging younger species. The pattern repeats over and over. Any civilization that develops, something the Council sees as threatening, gets hit with disasters that look natural but aren't. She pulled up dozens more cases. Species that developed new energy sources suffered reactor accidents that poisoned their worlds. Civilizations that created advanced weapons found their military fleets destroyed by mysterious malfunctions. Worlds that achieved breakthrough physics discoveries were hit by cosmic phenomena that shouldn't have been possible. They're not rulers, Carl said, his face pale with realization. They're parasites. They keep the galaxy weak so they can stay strong. Commander Ryan Hayes entered the laboratory carrying a sealed data case. The intelligence officer had spent months infiltrating Council databases using techniques that would have been impossible without dark matter technology. His expression was grim as he connected his findings to Elena's display system. I've confirmed. Everything Dr. Rodriguez discovered and found more, he announced. The Council has a specific protocol for dealing with emerging threats. They call it the stabilization process. New files appeared on the holographic display, showing internal Council memoranda about dozens of civilizations that had been stabilized over the centuries. Each case followed the same pattern. First came infiltration and assessment, then sabotage disguised as natural disasters or accidents. Finally, the survivors were offered Council protection and guidance, permanently cementing their dependence. Earth is already in their system, Ryan continued, highlighting humanity's entry in the Council database. We're classified as a Class 7 emerging threat with high potential for disruptive development. The stabilization protocol was approved 3 months ago. Elena felt her blood turn cold. What does that mean? It means they're going to hit us soon. The assessment team has identified our fusion technology and quantum computing as potentially destabilizing influences. They're planning to introduce technical failures that will set our development back by decades, maybe centuries. Amy stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. They're going to sabotage our technology and then offer to help us rebuild under their guidance. Just like they did to everyone else, Carl added bitterly. The helpful Council, always ready to assist. Civilizations that have suffered tragic accidents. Elena called up the timeline projections from Ryan's intelligence files. According to their schedule, the operation begins in 6 months. Multiple simultaneous failures across our fusion power grid, quantum research facilities, and space infrastructure. They estimate it will take us 500 years to recover, assuming we accept their guidance. The room fell silent as they processed the implications. Humanity had been marked for destruction not because they were evil or aggressive, but because they were innovative. The same creativity and determination that had lifted them from caves to space travel was now their death sentence. Admiral Morrison entered the laboratory looking older than his years. The stress of preparing for war while maintaining absolute secrecy had taken its toll. He reviewed the intelligence data with the cold calculation of a military commander planning for genocide. How many other species are they planning to hit? He asked. 7 civilizations are currently in active stabilization phases, Ryan replied. Another 12 are under assessment. The Council runs these operations constantly, keeping the galaxy locked in a state of permanent technological stagnation. Morrison studied the star maps showing affected systems. Most were distant civilizations that humanity had never heard of, but a few were closer than comfortable. The Council's reach extended across the entire galaxy, and they had been using it to commit systematic genocide for millennia. Our dark matter fleet is ready for deployment, he announced. 50 ships with full dark matter weapons arrays and stealth systems. We were planning to hit Council military installations to announce our capabilities. Now we have a different mission. Elena looked up from her data screens. What do you mean? We're not just fighting for humanity anymore. We're fighting for every species the Council has murdered and every civilization they plan to destroy. This isn't about revenge. It's about liberation. Amy pulled up the construction schedules for their hidden fleet. The ships are equipped with communication systems that can broadcast to the entire galaxy. We could send the evidence of Council crimes to every inhabited system simultaneously. Carl nodded enthusiastically. If the galaxy knew what the Council really was, there would be uprisings on hundreds of worlds. We wouldn't be fighting alone. First, we have to survive the fight, Morrison reminded them. The Council has fleets in 12 star systems and orbital platforms around their most important worlds. They have weapons we don't understand and technologies we've never seen. But they don't have dark matter weapons, Elena pointed out. Their sensors can't detect our ships and their defenses are designed for conventional warfare. We have the advantage of complete surprise. Ryan added his intelligence assessment to the planning session. The Council leadership meets at Nexus. Prime every 3 months for policy reviews. Their next session is in 8 weeks. If we hit them then, we can eliminate their command structure while broadcasting the evidence of their crimes. Morrison felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Humanity was about to go to war with the most powerful alliance in galactic history. But they weren't fighting as the primitive species that had been laughed at 5 years earlier. They were fighting as the possessors of technology the Council couldn't detect, understand, or counter. Begin final preparations, he ordered. In 8 weeks, the galaxy learns the truth about the Galactic Council, and they learn that humanity doesn't forgive or forget. The attack began at exactly 0300 Galactic Standard Time across 12 star systems simultaneously. 50 human warships materialized from the dark matter dimensions like ghosts becoming solid, their hulls shimmering with otherworldly energy as they emerged into normal space. The Council's sensors detected nothing until the first dark matter weapons began firing. Captain Susan Bell stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as it appeared directly inside Nexus Prime's defensive perimeter. The massive space station filled the view screen, its surface covered with weapon emplacements and shield generators that had never failed in 2,000 years of operation. Around them, Council warships moved in perfect formations, their crews, unaware that death had just arrived in their midst. "All weapons ready," reported Lieutenant Danny Clark from the tactical station. Dark matter cannons charged and target locks confirmed. Susan felt the weight of humanity's anger settling into her bones. 5 years of humiliation, 5 years of being caged like animals, 5 years of preparing for this moment. The Council had laughed at humanity's primitive technology. Now they would learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped playing by alien rules. "Fire!" she ordered. The dark matter cannons unleashed energy that existed partially outside reality itself. The beams struck Nexus Prime's shields and didn't bounce off or drain the generators. Instead, they passed through the defensive barriers, like they weren't there, and began tearing massive holes in the station's hull. Sections of the structure simply ceased to exist, erased from local space-time without leaving debris or radiation. Admiral Morrison watched from the UES Discovery as his fleet executed the plan they had rehearsed for months. Each ship had specific targets and timing requirements. The attack had to be perfect because there would be no second chance. If they failed, humanity would face the full wrath of 12 advanced civilizations. Captain Danny Clark commanded the UES Phantom as it struck, the Council's primary fleet base in the Vega system. The installation housed 300 warships and served as the main staging area for Council military operations. Danny's ship emerged from dark matter space directly inside the base's command center, its weapons already firing. "Target their communications first," he told his crew as dark matter beams carved through the base's control systems. "They can't coordinate a response if they can't talk to each other. The Council warships tried to respond, but their sensors couldn't lock onto targets that existed partially outside normal dimensions. Their weapons fired at empty space, while human ships moved through the battle like deadly phantoms. Conventional shields and armor provided no protection against weapons that attacked reality itself. On Nexus Prime, Zarthak and the surviving Council members fled deeper into the station as human Marines cut through their defenses. Colonel Jeff Stone led the assault team through corridors that shook with explosions and energy discharges. The same aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive insects now cowered behind barricades that offered no protection against dark matter weapons. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Retribution's science lab, monitoring the battle while preparing the most important part of their mission. The evidence of Council crimes was loaded into transmission systems that could broadcast to every inhabited system in the galaxy simultaneously. But first, they had to survive long enough to send it. Council reinforcements jumping in from the Rigel system, reported the sensor officer. 60 ships, heavy cruiser configuration. Susan smiled coldly as she watched the new arrivals appear on her tactical display. The Council fleet commanders were operating on old assumptions, thinking they faced conventional enemies who could be overwhelmed by superior numbers. They had no idea they were fighting technology their species couldn't. "Comprehend. Continue the primary mission," she ordered. "Let them come." The Council reinforcements opened fire with weapons that could vaporize planets, but their targeting systems couldn't acquire locks on the human ships. The dark matter hulls bent space around them in ways that made conventional sensors report empty space. Energy beams and missile barrages passed harmlessly through positions where the instruments insisted nothing existed. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its systematic destruction of Council military assets. The UES Shadow eliminated a weapons research station in the Altair system, erasing centuries of advanced weapons development in minutes. The UES Vengeance destroyed an orbital platform that served as the Council's intelligence headquarters, ensuring they couldn't coordinate their remaining forces. In the depths of Nexus Prime, Council Prime Zarthak found himself trapped in the same chamber where humanity had been humiliated 5 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on Colonel Stone as his Marines breached the doors and surrounded the alien leadership. The metallic being who had laughed at human technology now faced weapons he couldn't understand or counter. "You cannot do this," Zarthak protested, his 4 arms gesturing frantically. "The Council maintains order in the galaxy. Without us, there will be chaos." Colonel Stone checked his dark matter rifle and smiled without humor. Funny thing about chaos, sometimes it's better than the alternative. But Admiral Morrison had different plans than simple execution. The human fleet had achieved total tactical superiority faster than anyone had expected. Now came the moment that would reshape galactic history. He opened a communication channel that reached every inhabited system within 1,000 light years. "People of the galaxy," he began, his voice carried by dark matter transmissions that no Council technology could intercept or jam. "You have been lied to for millennia. The Galactic Council isn't your protector. They are your oppressors." The evidence began broadcasting simultaneously across hundreds of worlds. Council records detailing the systematic destruction of advanced civilizations, classified files showing planned sabotage operations, and testimony from the few survivors who had witnessed their species being stabilized by Council forces. Ondei, 1,000 planets, beings who had worshipped the Council as benevolent guardians, learned they were ruled by genocidal parasites. The Altarian refugees who had survived the plague saw proof that their extinction was planned. The scattered remnants of the Kepler Union discovered their AI systems had been deliberately destroyed. Dozens of other species learned that their ancestors had been murdered for the crime of innovation. Amy Foster monitored the galaxy-wide communication networks from the Retribution's engineering deck. "The transmissions are reaching everyone," she reported excitedly. Response broadcasts are coming in from systems we didn't even know were inhabited. The effect was immediate and explosive. On Council Protectorate worlds, uprisings began within hours. Species that had accepted their limitations for centuries suddenly understood they had been crippled on purpose. The careful stability the Council had maintained for millennia began crumbling as suppressed populations demanded answers. Captain Susan Bell watched her tactical display fill with new contacts as rebel fleets launched from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. It seemed humanity wasn't the only species that had been working in secret to challenge Council authority. The difference was that humans had developed the technology to win. The battle for Nexus Prime was over within 6 hours. The station's defenses lay in ruins, its government facilities occupied by human marines, and its leadership captured or dead. The other 11 Council strongholds fell even faster as human ships struck without warning and departed before conventional forces could respond. Zarthak sat in a detention cell aboard the Retribution, still trying to process what had happened. In less than a day, the Council's military power had been shattered by a species they had dismissed as barely sentient. The humans had developed weapons that ignored physical laws and tactics that made conventional warfare obsolete. How? He asked when Admiral Morrison came to interrogate him. Your species was centuries away from this level of technology. Morrison studied the alien leader who had presided over humanity's humiliation. You made the same mistake your predecessors did with every other species. You assumed that being different meant being inferior. Humans don't think the way you do, and that gives us advantages you never considered. As the human fleet prepared to depart Nexus Prime, Elena Rodriguez transmitted one final message to the galaxy. The Galactic Council's reign of terror is over. Any species seeking freedom from oppression can contact the Free Worlds Alliance. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves and ensure that no civilization is ever again destroyed for the crime of innovation. The response was overwhelming. Within days, representatives from dozens of species were requesting meetings with humanity's leaders. The galaxy that had laughed at Earth's primitive ambassadors now begged for audience with the liberators who had shattered 10,000 years of Council dominance. The war was over before most people realized it had begun. But the revolution was just starting. 6 months after the strikes that shattered the Galactic Council, Admiral Morrison stood in what had once been the Council chamber on Nexus Prime. The massive space station now served as headquarters for the Free Worlds Alliance, a coalition of species that grew larger every week. Where 12 platforms had once held the galaxy's oppressors, hundreds of smaller stages now accommodated representatives from civilizations that were finally free to speak for themselves. The transformation had been more rapid and complete than anyone had expected. Within days of the truth broadcasts, revolutions erupted on over 300 worlds. Species that had lived under Council protection for millennia suddenly realized they had been prisoners in comfortable cages. The careful stability that had kept the galaxy peaceful was revealed as systematic oppression designed to prevent progress and innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the Galactic Research Institute, a facility that had been built in the ruins of the Council's Weapons Development Center. Here, human and alien scientists worked together on projects that would have been forbidden under the old regime. The dark matter technology that had won humanity's war was being shared carefully, with trusted allies, creating a network of species capable of defending themselves against any remaining Council loyalists. The quantum entanglement array is working perfectly, reported Dr. Carl Bennett as he emerged from a laboratory filled with equipment that mixed human and alien designs. We can now communicate instantly with any world in the galaxy. The isolation protocols the Council used to keep species separated are completely useless. Elena nodded with satisfaction. Communication had been one of the Council's most effective control mechanisms. By limiting faster-than-light messaging to their own networks, they had prevented different species from sharing knowledge or coordinating. Resistance. Now, information flowed freely across the galaxy, accelerating technological development at a pace that would have terrified the old order. Captain Susan Bell, now Admiral Bell, commanded the growing Free World's fleet from the UES Retribution. The dark matter warships that had once been humanity's secret weapon now patrolled openly throughout the galaxy, their hulls shimmering with otherworldly beauty as they protected species that had never dreamed of true freedom. The sight of human ships arriving in a system had become a symbol of hope rather than conquest. "Latest intelligence reports from the Outer Rim," she announced during the daily briefing. "2 more Council holdout systems have requested amnesty in exchange for cooperation. The Helix Collective wants to share their quantum consciousness technology, and the Vortani Enclave is offering dimensional physics research." Admiral Morrison reviewed the requests with the careful attention of someone who understood that winning a war was easier than building a lasting peace. The Free Worlds Alliance couldn't survive as a purely military organization. It needed to become something better than what it had replaced, a genuine partnership between equals rather than another form of domination. Approved, he decided. But with full transparency requirements, every species that joins the Alliance agrees to open their research to partner worlds and submit to non-interference protocols. Amy Foster looked up from her workstation where she was designing the next generation of exploration vessels. "The Liberation-class ships are ready for testing. These aren't warships, but pure exploration platforms designed to seek out new civilizations beyond the galaxy's edge." The ship designs represented everything the Free Worlds Alliance hoped to become. Where the old Council had feared contact with unknown species, humanity actively sought it out. The dark matter technology that made their ships nearly undetectable would be used to approach new civilizations carefully, offering knowledge and friendship rather than conquest or control. On Earth, Ambassador Lisa Grant stood before the Terran Federation Congress in her new role as Secretary General. The woman who had once been humiliated by Council laughter now oversaw humanity's transformation from galactic outcasts to guardians of freedom. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. "Our expansion colonies in the Proxima and Centauri systems are thriving," she reported to the packed chamber. "More importantly, we've received formal alliance requests from 47 different species. The galaxy that once laughed at our primitive technology now looks to us for protection and leadership." The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Several former Council species struggled to accept their new status as equals rather than superiors. The younger generation adapted quickly, but older beings like Zarthak found it difficult to abandon millennia of supremacist thinking. Some had chosen exile rather than integration, fleeing to the galaxy's outer regions, where they could maintain their old ways of life. Commander Ryan Hayes monitored these holdout groups from his intelligence center on Nexus Prime. 3 minor IDA factions are still trying to rebuild Council authority in the Magellanic Clouds, he reported during a security briefing. They're calling themselves the Restoration Movement and claiming humanity has brought chaos to the galaxy. "Let them try," Admiral Morrison replied without concern. "The species they're trying to reconquer now have access to dark matter technology and quantum communication networks. Any attempt at renewed oppression will be met with immediate resistance." The contrast with the old system couldn't have been more dramatic. Where the Council had ruled through fear and systematic sabotage, the Alliance governed through cooperation and shared knowledge. Species that had stagnated for centuries under careful limitation were now advancing at incredible rates, developing technologies that built on both their own traditions and human innovations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez often worked late in her expanded laboratory, refining the dark matter systems that had made humanity's revolution possible. The substance that existed partially outside normal reality had become the foundation for a new type of civilization, one that could defend itself against oppression while remaining open to growth and change. The latest modification allows for selective visibility, she explained to a group of young scientists from a dozen different worlds. Ships can become partially solid in normal space while remaining undetectable to hostile sensors. It's like being able to choose which dimension you exist in. The implications were staggering. Fleets equipped with selective reality generators could appear anywhere instantly, communicate across impossible distances, and defend their worlds with weapons that bypassed conventional physics entirely. But more importantly, they could explore regions of space that had been impossible to reach, seeking out new forms of life and knowledge. The launch of the UES Liberation marked a new chapter in galactic history. The massive exploration vessel was humanity's greatest achievement, a ship designed not for war but for discovery. Its dark matter drive could reach velocities that made intergalactic travel possible, while its sensor arrays could detect life forms existing in dimensions previous science hadn't known about. Captain Jake Morrison, the Admiral's nephew, commanded the Liberation as it prepared for humanity's first journey beyond the Milky Way. The young officer had grown up hearing stories about the Council's humiliation of his uncle's diplomatic mission. Now he was leading humanity's message of hope and cooperation to entirely new galaxies. "Final systems check complete," he reported to Admiral Morrison during their farewell communication. "Dark matter drives operating at full efficiency. Quantum. Communication array maintaining contact with Alliance headquarters and exploration teams ready for whatever we might find out there." As the Liberation disappeared into the cosmic void, carrying humanity's promise of freedom to civilizations that might never have heard of the Galactic Council, Admiral Morrison reflected on how much had changed. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive insects now served as the galaxy's protectors, ensuring that no civilization would ever again be destroyed for the crime of innovation. The Alliance continued to grow as news of humanity's victory spread to the furthest reaches of known space. Species that had hidden in the galaxy's dark corners for millennia emerged to join the new order. Each brought their own knowledge and perspective, creating a diversity of thought that had been impossible under Council rule. In the years that followed, children from hundreds of different worlds would learn about the day humanity's dark matter warships arrived at Nexus Prime. They would study how a species dismissed as primitive had developed technology their oppressors couldn't understand, and how the galaxy's laughter had turned to grateful tears. The Free Worlds Alliance became more than just a government or military organization. It became a symbol that innovation and cooperation could triumph over oppression and control. The galaxy that had once been divided by artificial barriers now worked together toward goals that previous generations could never have imagined. And in the depths of space, human ships continued their eternal patrol, ensuring that the laughter would never again belong to tyrants. The galaxy was free, and it would remain free as long as humanity remembered the lesson they had taught among the stars. Freedom wasn't given by those in power. It was taken by those brave enough to reach for it.